follow the instructions which have been given here. Please keep your mics on mute so that we can deliberate well and there's no noise during the session. Uh, we will be expecting all the remarks or questions in the chat box, and at the end we can have a Q&A if the time permits. Okay, so now we will start. Good evening to everyone and warm welcome to the webinar hosted by Dhadda and Company to discuss the much talked about changes which have been recommended by GST Council in its meeting 56th GST Council meeting held on 3rd of September, where there have been huge changes in rates of GST, which have been talked about everywhere. And there are some rationalization measures in the rates and few policy decisions also which have been taken, which have implications on varied industries and some general implications as well. So before going into the sectoral discussion, we will like to put forth the background of this council meeting, how this rate rationalization come into picture. And since 2017, there have been lots of discussions about the slab rates under GST. Initially, of course, we are well aware that there were few rates of GST which were specified for different goods and services. What was the background behind those rates? Why additional rates came in with times? And why now GST Council, or let's say government, has reconsidered that whole structure of rates should be again changed after 8 years of implementation of GST in India. So to lay out the background, we will first discuss that when GST came in, before that there were some existing laws in India, indirect tax laws, which primarily had our excise laws, which were triggered at the manufacturing end. Then there were VAT and central sales tax laws, and there were few more duties which were imposed during the channel till the goods, or let's say services, reached to the consumer. As per the study, it was understood that the revenue neutral rate, considering the earlier laws, if GST would have been imposed, considering all the existing rates, the rate should, an average rate which should have been there, which would have been neutral considering the existing laws, it should have been or would have been 15%, around 15%. But when GST came in, it did not come with a single rate. It did not come with 15% rate on every product or service. Rather, how it was implemented in India was considering different products and services and keeping the status as is. The government brought different slabs of goods, rates for goods and services, and that too ranging from, let's say, 5% to 20%, 28% in general, and few lower rates also for products like jewelry. So there were varied, let's say 7 rates were there, starting from 1.5% to 28%. And there was a levy of compensation cess also. Compensation cess was levied because center promised the states to reserve or take care of their revenue aspects also, which of course due to a unified levy which was had to be taken care of. So compensation cess was there. And these rates were brought in considering the existing law and the change, and whatever policy decisions all the states coming together on a table could take at that point in time. Now, when that was implemented, an economy faced various issues, and those issues came on the table before the GST Council, let's say the government of India, considering those representations which came from the economy and the economic factors which these 8 years of trade faced, which was, let's say, now at the present scenario, the economy faced that US tariff trade war, other global factors also, which hampered or impacted business in a different manner as it may have been projected at the time when GST was brought in. When when these changes in the economical or circumstantial factors were there, government could apprehend one thing for sure, that Indian economy has to be a little more robust so that the economy does not completely depend on the exports. And for that robustness in Indian economy itself, consumption had to rise in India. And to motivate that rise of consumption in India, one thing which government could understood had to be done on its part was rationalization of the GST rates in the goods or services sold in the domestic market. Because there was only one indirect tax levy now in India, so that rate had to be rationalized, that government could understand, and that gave rise to a discussion regarding the rationalization of GST rates in India. Now, because that rationalization became a complicated action to be taken in one go, because those steps evolved from a journey of, let's say, 4 years, 5 years. In 2021, government understood that there's a lot of data analysis which had to be done regarding this, and then only the decision making could be done. So government formed a group of ministers which were assigned the responsibility to analyze that data, the past history and the projections, and then come up with the proposed rate changes. That 2021 action has now been actually put on table for execution. That the government of a group of ministers formed that rationalization proposition, and council discussed it in the last meeting and finally closed it with the rate changes which have been floated. To start with, one important factual aspect which has not been put on social media or the discussions, which has to be taken care of, is all these rate changes, because the calls are on day one, all the calls were regarding whether these rate changes are coming today or not. So the answer to first question is no, the rate changes have not been implemented from 3rd September. And it's not a very long journey also. The date has already been announced. We don't have to wait for the notifications, though its application will be by notification. But council has clarified or clearly put it out that these rates will be effective from 22nd of September. So the date is also available right now. Now we have an intermediate fixed period of 3rd September to 24th September to 22nd September, where every decision has to be taken before the rate change has to be actually implemented in the businesses. Now, we'll discuss what kind of policy changes businesses have to take in this regard. Before that, we will present here something for ease to scroll through the rate changes which have been made, because a 2-hour discussion cannot elaborate or pinpoint every rate change on a product level, what changes have been made and what that industry particularly has to do. So what we have done here is we've made a website where all the rate changes have been compiled at a sectoral level, and they have further been divided into industries and further drilled down to product level. I will on my screen show that website to you all, and that link has already been made live. It will be shared with all of you by the end of the day today, and you can also go through it, have a hands-on experience, and we will love to hear back the feedback around it. Yash sir, please give me a thumb raise if the website is visible on my screen. Thank you so much. So for all of you, this is what we've come up with. This is a website which we have curated. It is completely covering all the rate changes and the other aspects, everything which the GST Council has proposed or deliberated upon. It has a basic detail or elaboration of the changes which have been brought down, and it is a compilation which has been divided into the sectors. As you can see on your screen, all the rate changes have firstly been grouped under different sectors, and then these sectoral rate measures or rate changes have been further divided into some, you can say, baskets of industries. And then every rate change at HSN level with the description of the product or the service has been mentioned here with a comparison of the earlier rate, which was effective before council proposed any rate change, and the new rate which has been proposed by the council. You can scroll through all of these on a click of a button. For example, right now I'm on this page which displays the rate changes for the food industry. If you have to check the rate changes for textile and footwear industry, it's as easy as possible. On a click of a button, you can just go through, click on this tab of textile and footwear, and you'll have all textile related products listed here with the earlier rate and the new rate, along with the HSN and the description as it is, as they're mentioned in the tariff. Like this. This comes up with a easy or a very easy, I'll say, user interface where you can simply write Control F and search whatever you have to search. For example, I have to search footwear here. So I'll just write footwear and footwear products wherever they are listed in the tariff. You can just scroll through them. So why I'm explaining this is because after these rate changes, you will have to wait for the notifications to actually go to a legal material, or maybe we'll go to the press release and the annexures which have come up with them. To have an easy access product wise of that rate changes, we have came up with this, so that if you have to ask anything about your particular concern or industry and see what rate change has been brought on your product, you can just look at the HSN and the respective description. Now in this session, what will be our flow for the discussion? What we are doing is, now that you have the rate changes at your ease available by the end of the day, here in this discussion, what we'll do is we'll handpick some industries and some sub areas where we think, because due to the rate rationalization and other measures which the government has brought, there's some issues or areas of discussion which are cropping up, which need a little expert advice or clarification, which we could gauge from the changes so far. Of course, whatever discussions are sought from your side, that will be done on calls and emails and Q&A here also. But whatever we could handpick from the calls so far and our understanding, we'll be discussing that in this session. So to start with, before we go to every page here for every sector, what rate changes has been brought here, I will like to generally state, to my understanding, which industries have had an exposure of increase in GST rates, and which are the areas which have seen a rate reduction here. So to my understanding, rate reduction is there in few sectors, like mostly consumer oriented goods. So for example, household goods like toiletries or maybe tableware, kitchenware, those kind of goods which are consumed or used in household activities, those have a rate reduction. We'll go to the page here also, which lays down such kind of rate changes. For example, lifestyle rate changes are mentioned here, kitchenware changes are mentioned here. So there are the rate reductions. We can see this whole list of tableware and kitchenware. It was there in 12% rate slab earlier, and now it has a rate of 5%. So household consumer goods, home appliances have seen a rate reduction, where ACs, dishwashers, washing machines, there's a rate reduction in that also. Another sector, again, in this page, at this page itself, handicrafts have seen a rate reduction of 12 to 5. Automobile sector, motor vehicles. There's a lot of discussion around this also. So in both type of cars which were bifurcated into the tariff on the basis of their engine capacity, less than 1500 cc or more than 1500 cc, have seen a rate change. Now this rate change, whether it's a reduction or it's an increase, there's a discussion around that also, because the earlier rates of GST on vehicles had a component of tax and a component of compensation cess. Now there are two changes which have impacted these rates, and those changes are that, for example, less than 1500 cc or 1200 cc, the vehicle rate, the GST rate on the vehicle has decreased from 28% to 18%. So there's a decrease of, let's say, 10% here. And the cess, which was leviable, 1 or 3%, that has also been removed. So there's an effective reduction of, let's say, 11% here or 13% here. Similarly, for the goods exceeding 1200 or 1500 cc engine capacity, there was a cess of 15% and 17%, which has been completely removed. And then, sorry, these are the rates here. And the rate has been but increased from 28 to 40%. But because this 28 to 40 is only the rate change of 12%, but there it comes with a complete removal of 20% or 22% cess. So even in these cases, the cars have not become costlier, but rather cheaper, comparing the effective rate considering compensation cess. Now, because we're discussing the rates for automobile sector, there comes up a question that whether these rate changes will impact the industry in itself. Let's say for consumers, we've considered that it becomes cheaper, but the ones who are dealing in automobiles, because compensation cess is something, it's a levy on their inward as well. I will pose a question to you, Yash sir, whether any compensation cess which has been accumulated so far with these industries, will it have a utilization further? Because now their sale of cars will not have any compensation cess. What will be the fate of this accumulated cess in their balances?
Thank you. Thank you, Shashi. First of all, good afternoon to all of you and welcome to this discussion. I think Shuchi has set the context quite appropriately when she explained in the starting that what has happened and why it has happened. One thing which she didn't pinpoint, but it was pointed out by the Revenue Secretary during the course of press conference after the GST Council meeting, where a question was asked by the media constantly to the Revenue Secretary. And I think not only media, but that is a question which all of us have in our minds. And that question is, we know that government has reduced the rates, and that sentiment is an extremely positive sentiment. It is a sentiment where I think nobody who is aware about even a basics about the basics of GST, they would say that these reforms, no doubt in letter and in spirit, they do they are actually, it makes GST 2.0 reforms. That's what government is also propagating. But what will happen to the compensate? What will happen to the revenue of the government? Whether the revenue of the government would reduce or not, and if that revenue would reduce, then we know that this being one of the most important sources of revenue, not only for central government but also for the state governments, then how is government going to consider that loss of revenue which they have, and how are they going to compensate themselves for this? The answer which was given by the revenue secretary during the course of press conference, and he was asked that what is the expected loss, and he said that we have not calculated what is going to be the actual loss of revenue which is going to be there, but there is obviously no doubt that government will have loss. But they said, based on the data of 2023-24 consumption which has happened in India, if we consider the rate changes based on that data, then approximately 48,000 crores to 49,000 crores is going to be that number based on 23-24 data, not on the basis of what is going to be the consumption in 24-25, what was the consumption in 24-25, or what is the consumption in current year of 25-26, but based on the data of 23-24. he said this is going to be the expected, if this rate reduction would have happened based on that data, then that is the number. Now, if that being the number, and if we consider that what the consumption levels, obviously over the period of time, considering the inflation and other factors that would increase, no doubt government has actually opened its purse, and it has opened it for everybody. बट अगर हम थोड़ा सा पीछे जाके देखें, जो शुचि ने कॉम्पनसेशन सेस की बात करी और गवर्नमेंट ने बोला कि हम कॉम्पनसेशन सेस को सिर्फ टबैको तक रिस्ट्रिक्ट रखेंगे और उसके अलावा बाकी सब के ऊपर कॉम्पनसेशन सेस 22 सितंबर 2025 से बंद हो जाएगा. So in that context, when you would look at it, that when government has opened its purse and there is a rate reduction, ये rate reduction है कहाँ पर? And if you would look at very closely, government has majorly done the rate reduction on all finished goods. That is all consumer goods which are directly consumed by the consumer. And rightly so also, because ultimately what they want to demonstrate to the public at large, they want to encourage everybody to actually use the expected benefit which would be there and use it in the consumption, so that the consumption pattern of the country goes up. So wherever the rate reduction is there, first of all, 90% of the rate reduction, or in fact not 90%, more than 90% of the rate reduction is on the supply of goods. That's not on the supply of services. That's point number one. Point number two, the working has happened in a very simple manner, that initially when GST was brought in, we had 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, then some cess, and then later on subsequently some additional rates were added, like 0.125%, then 1.5% and 3%. Government said, let's not do anything with 0.125 or 1.5 and 3%, but let's do away with 12% and 28%. Wherever 12% was there, in which government did not earn much of the revenue, and that's what the estimated data suggested कि 12% जीएसटी रेट से सरकार के पास कोई खास रेवेन्यू आ नहीं रहा था. 65% ऑफ द रेवेन्यू वाज एक्चुअली कमिंग फ्रॉम 18% जीएसटी रेट. गवर्नमेंट सेड कि वो 12% को अगर हम कम करके मेजॉरिटी आइटम्स को, नॉट एवरी आइटम, अगर मेजॉरिटी आइटम्स को 5% में लेके आ जाते, then in that case, first we'll have good sentiment to the public. Second, litigation in terms of classification will reduce. That's point number two. And then point number three, there'll be much of a clarity कि हम revenue neutral rate की तरफ कैसे बढ़ सकते हैं. जब ये हुआ तो इसके साथ जो compensation cess है, which only came because state governments को on board लेके आने की जरूरत थी when GST was brought in India in 2017. तो जब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट था और कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म की जरूरत थी, सो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स वर प्रॉमिस्ड बाय द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट दैट यू कम ऑन बोर्ड फॉर नेक्स्ट 5 years. Central government said that we'll take care of your revenue growth up till next 5 years, and whatever shortfall is going to be there, that shortfall is going to be compensated. And for that, an additional kitty was brought in by way of levying compensation cess on certain goods, either they were luxury goods or the government called them at all those goods where there was a possibility that the consumer can afford to pay additional tax, जिसको अब उन्होंने चेंज करके सिन गुड्स और लग्जरी गुड्स नाम देके उसको 40% की ऑलमोस्ट रेट के अंदर लेकर आ गए. Now, because that 5 year period is gone, government, according to them, has been able to recover substantial portion of the compensation cess which they have already paid to the state government. So they decided that they'll discontinue with it, except in case of tobacco and related products. So now the major industry which is hit because of that is obviously automobile, because all of us know that on automobile दो ऐसे products हैं जिसके ऊपर cess था जो रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में which was impacting all of us. One is on coal, the whatever coal you were purchasing for the purpose of using it in your manufacturing facilities, and second is this motor vehicles, especially cars. So now that we are not going to have compensation says on the smaller cars or the larger cars, as Shuchi already explained the rates, government was asked a question, what will happen? What will happen in terms of कि अगर let's say किसी डीलर के पास में compensation cess है जो लगकर आया हुआ है, तो वो compensation cess वो compensation cess का government refund देगी क्या? And the answer again, which has come only through by way of interviews in the media, it is nowhere in any document, but there is no provision in the law also. in the Compensation Cess Act also, there is no provision that in case I have a balance lying in my compensation cess, then whether I can claim a refund of it, except if I'm, let's say I'm using those goods for making my zero rated supplies. तो अगर मैं export नहीं कर रहा हूँ, and if let's say I have balance lying in my electronic credit ledger as compensation cess, unfortunately I cannot claim a refund of it. In last 2 days, ever since it has come in automobile industry, the apex bodies, they have already met the government. It is not the case कि वो सरकार से मिले नहीं. What I am being told is SIAM is one of those bodies which has already met the government officials yesterday, and today what I am told, FADA is meeting the government officials today only, and they are representing it to the government that there has to be some mechanism to be brought in कि इस compensation cess का या तो refund दिया जाए, और अगर रिफंड पॉसिबल नहीं है, जो बैलेंस रहेगा 22 सितंबर 2025 को उन सबके इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर में, तो उसको आईजीएसटी में कन्वर्ट कर दिया जाए. अगर इसका आप लीगल बैकग्राउंड देखेंगे, अनफॉर्चुनेटली द लीगल बैकग्राउंड इज अगेंस्ट. There is already a decision of Honorable Supreme Court in case of education cess, where if let's say I had balance in my education cess, and when the education cess was discontinued or it was subsumed during the service tax or excise regime, then all those people who had balances, they filed refund, their refunds were rejected. Then they filed a writ petition before the Honorable High Court, and they said कि इसको subsume करना चाहिए excise और service tax में. सुप्रीम कोर्ट सेट कि जब लॉ में कोई प्रोविजन ही नहीं है सबस्यूम करने का, और वो सेस एक अलग स्पेसिफिक पर्पस के लिए लगा है, तो वो टैक्स में सबस्यूम नहीं हो सकता. So so long answer to the very specific question which she asked is, unfortunately, as of now, there is no provision that all these automobile dealers, if they will have compensation cess in their electronic credit ledgers, unfortunately, they will not be able to actually claim a refund. Until the time there is no legislative change which allows the cross utilization of this compensation cess against the regular tax, this would actually lapse. And all of us know if it is going to lapse, then obviously those dealers are going to build it up in the cost of the vehicle, maybe in the medium run. It may not happen in a short run, clearly, but it may happen in a medium run, and maybe in a long run, that all those are going to have balances that would be there. In case of coal, obviously we know that all those who procure coal, and if you're exporting goods using that coal, there is a provision in the law. If you have balance in your electronic credit ledger of that compensation cess of coal, you can claim refund. You can claim refund even if you're exporting under LUT, or even if you're exporting on payment of IGST. There is a recent Gujarat High Court decision which says even if you're exporting goods on payment of IGST, and your exported goods is not leviable to compensation cess, still you are allowed to claim refund of the compensation cess which you have paid on the purchase of the coal. तो कोल पर भी अब सेस नहीं लगने वाला सितंबर 22 के बाद में, बट अगर पुराना कोई सेस है और आप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करके गुड्स एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, तब उस सेस का आप रिफंड क्लेम कर सकते हैं.
Thank you so much for the insight, sir. Now, moving ahead to another industry where we observe there's a big change which will have a pervasive impact on all the businesses is in the sector of transportation. Under transportation, there are two types of major baskets of services, that is transportation of passengers and transportation of goods. More relevant here is a discussion on transportation services for goods, where we are aware there were two rates earlier, which were 5% or 12%. If the transporter was having an option to opt for forward charge mechanism using all its input tax credit and then levy a tax of 12%, which was available as ITC to the recipients. If he does not opt to do so, the law already has a provision that the recipient pays 5% tax under reverse charge mechanism. Now, with these rate rationalization measures, there's a huge change, which I understand is the rate of 12% has now moved to 18%. So now transporters will charge a tax of 18% on their freight if they are opting for forward charge, and they'll be availing their ITC. And to my understanding, there's no huge ITC accumulation with the industry, with the transport service providers. So this rate changes will not be, I'll say it will not cover up only their cost, but it will be an added tax burden on the industry, every kind of industry, whether it be manufacturing, trading, or service, because everybody has to incur transportation costs for all the goods which they procure. So, will it be a huge cost hit to the industry, or how do you see it?
Oh, absolutely. So this is that one change where the anticlimax has happened. But again, because 12% का rate को जाना ही था, and any which way transportation was under 12%. So either it could have gone to 5% or it could have gone to 18%. 5% was already an option available with ITC. Sorry, without ITC. So then obviously they could not have brought 5% with ITC. That would have changed the dynamics of the industry completely. So again, the only option which was available was to pay tax, to claim credit, but to increase the rate to 18%. Now, if you would look at it from a transporter's perspective, they would say it is okay because any which way for forward charge they would collect it from the customer. And the understanding is because freight cost generally is creditable unless I am into the business where I am making an exempt supply of goods. So it will not add to the cost burden. But ये सब चीज का ये ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है that wherever there is going to be a rate change in services, and if there is an increase of rate in respect of inward services, please mind that now with effect from 22nd of September 2022, majority of the industries are actually having a rate reduction on their outward supplies of goods. So if they are into business of supplying goods और वहां पर अगर outward side में rate कम हुआ है, then this rate increase of transportation from 12% to 18%, it will add to the balance of electronic credit ledger and it will be an input services. Now we all of us know if I have a balance of input services and if I have a credit accumulation, then I cannot claim refund under inverted duty structure. So this is that situation if जो ये 6% का rate increase है transportation पे, and all those industries where transportation is a major component of the cost, but where the outward is at a lower rate, it will lead to duty inversion, but there is going to be no refund possibility under inverted duty structure unless somebody is able to devise out a mechanism to claim a refund in those cases. This is not only in respect of transportation. I think what Shuchi was explained, it also has the change is there not only related to GTA services, but in respect of rental services and multimodal services. Correct, Shuchi?
Yes, I'm coming to that. From your explanation, actually, I got one more question. So now that you're saying from the transporter's angle, it may be an okay increase because that will not impact their costs. But for the manufacturing sector, because it's a huge cost, I will rather ask because that is their clientele, whether from both point of view, there should be a reconsideration to the aspect of transportation service procurement that from the transporter's angle, should they revisit their option of opting for forward charge or reverse charge, which they have undertaken already or for the going forward years, and whether the manufacturers should also now be again picky about whom to work with so that they can ration their costs, because as you said, they will, if this is a huge cost in their costing, and in cases they will not be able to even retrieve that cost from inverted duty refunds, then whether they should go with that 18% of tax, the cost which attracts 18%, or they should rather stick to 5% and opt those transporters who are giving those options.
Yeah, obviously. So wherever there is a rate change on the outward side, and because now rate has increased, one would always be tempted and go back and look it and ask the transporter whether now will he be interested in giving a freight bill with 5% GST under forward charge, or whether you are ready to pay tax under reverse charge. But one practical problem on the ground is if you are continuing to work in the same firm, same transportation firm, we know that now at the starting of the year we have to opt whether I want to pay tax at 12% or 5%. So in the middle of the year I cannot change, and this rate change is coming exactly at the middle of the year. So if let's say somebody has to actually recalibrate their cost, the only option available is to either approach a new transporter or tell the existing transporter to make a new firm, and where they are ready to either bill under 5% without ITC or to opt under reverse charge mechanism. But for bigger transporter players it will not be an easy call, because वो सबके पास में input tax credit पड़ा होगा trucks का.
Purchasing.
especially somebody who has increased their fleet in last 5 years. So then they may not be ready to do that, because then they will have to reverse their proportionate input tax credit.
Correct. Understood.
So on
Okay.
ground, maybe middle of the year, it may not be a possibility unless you are able to find an alternate way of entering into a transportation agreement.
Okay. Besides GTA services, as you said, there's a type of combined set of services which is known as multimodal transport of goods, which is there in transportation industry. There's a rate change from 12 to 5 in that also. What are the other legal factors surrounding this rate change, if you can deliberate upon that?
It's a good change. This multimodal is where I am being basically asked to do a transportation within India. That's the definition of multimodal, which is there. From one location to another location in India, and where more than, let's say, more than one mode of transportation is involved for moving goods from one place to another. Earlier, there was no option available. So if somebody was providing a multimodal services, they were compulsorily required to pay tax at the rate of 12% with ITC. अब जैसा बाकी सब ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में ऑप्शन अवेलेबल है, नाउ मल्टी मॉडल ट्रांसपोर्टर ऑल्सो हैज एन ऑप्शन 5% विदाउट आईटीसी और मे बी ओनली आईटीसी ऑफ सर्विसेज or 18% with complete ITC. So that goes in line with other transportation options which are available. So that ways it would be important. Only exception is that this 5% condition which would be there. In that case, there should not be any movement of goods through air. So it can be through road, it can be through rail, it can be through water, but it should not be through air. If it is not there, then in that case, they can opt for 5% without any input tax credit of services which are not of the similar line of business. So it's a good change that brings the industry at par.
Okay. Talking about bringing the industry at par, because GTA services have now been moved from 12 to 18, do you see, because there's this whole new concept which is taking a rise in the industry, that people are acting as C&F agents for taking care of the whole inventory management along with providing the transportation service. And it's a very rising practice in the industry, as we observe. That industry were they facing any classification issue with the earlier rate when transportation was at 12%, and the other services, warehousing services which they were providing, that was taxable at 18% independently. Now that transportation also comes with a 18% tax rate, whether that solves that issue?
Yes, yes, you are absolutely right. And you are also aware that we are handling a lot of those matters where there was a classification issue. Classification where government was saying that if you are a C&F agent, and along with that, if you're giving a transportation service, let's say you're doing storage, warehousing services for your customers, and along with that, you're giving transportation of goods by road, then you should charge 18% on transportation also. So that 6% was a big problem. And there was this was a issue which was a legacy issue from service tax regime. Then government came out with a circular in the service tax regime, then in the GST regime also recently, where they said that GTA service is ancillary, not ancillary, and that will determine that what is going to be the classification. Now at par rates, that issue is gone. So from that perspective, this is definitely going to help them that one litigation issue is closed now, that there is going to be no litigation because of this rate change.
Right. So as you pointed out, removal of 12% rate will actually address a lot of classification issues. Now, going forward with another rate change, which is an increase in tax rate, is it is observed that there's an increase in tax rate for job work. So there was a residual entry for job work in the tariff where there were some specified chapters, or I'll say type of goods, for which job work was classified at a concessional rate of 5% in the tariff already. But the residual entry had a rate of 12% along with benefit of ITC. That also there also there's been a change of rate from 12 to 18. So now the whole job work cost, which if it is there in the structure of the business, it is a huge cost. Unless the industry is having a huge manufacturing setup at its own and it is sending the goods to anybody, let it be an unrelated party or an outside vendor or even its related parties. They're billing at whatever value with 12% GST right now. Now that huge cost comes with 18% tax. How do you see this impacting the industry?
Correct. So I think we purposefully chose these two entries together. So one is a rate increase in respect of transportation. Another is a rate increase again in respect of not only transportation, which was there, but also job work services. So in 2022, if I remember correctly, government reduced the rate in respect of job work from 18% to 12%. तो इंडस्ट्री स्पेसिफिक्स में तो एनी विच वे लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल इन टर्म्स ऑफ टेक्सटाइल द रेट ऑफ जॉब वर्क वाज एनी विच वे 5%. फॉर प्रिंटिंग इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ न्यूज़पेपर्स इट वाज ऑलरेडी 5%. So for specific industries it was already at a lower rate. Residuary job work which was not anywhere specifically classified, it was reduced to 12%. So it was a good 6% reduction which was given. Now because again that 12% it is gone, it goes to 18%. In case of all those products where tax is payable at 18%, it may not have much of an impact. That credit will be used. But in all those cases where now the rate has reduced, like for example, solar. So solar is that one industry which is going to have impact because it has an element of job work which is there. So because now rate in respect of solar has reduced, but the rate of job work has increased. So this is going to be an additional addition to the electronic credit ledger. And again, the problem is because job work is a service, you can't claim refund of it under inverted duty structure. So this in respect of all those industries where there is no specific job work rate and there has been a reduction in the outward supplies, this will add to that burden of electron not burden may not be the correct word, but unfortunately it will add to the accumulated input tax credit where refund would not be possible if it is not consumed.
Uh, from the business side, do you suggest there are any alternatives which the industry should explore to take care of this cost?
In respect of job work, well, see, why do people do job work? Very simple. I think all of us who are here, we know it, that because labor laws in India are so difficult to comply with that you cannot take everybody on roll. And because you cannot take everybody on roll, hence the only option which is available is to actually appoint a contractor and tell that contractor to do the compliance, and you hire them for work but not hire them for their man hours. So the only option which is available now is you take people on roll, which I think would be even more a difficult compliance to do rather than actually paying this additional 6%. So I don't see any other way of doing it. Rather, job work would still be much cheaper, much compliance friendly, rather than actually taking people on board and saving that GST cost of additional 6%.
Now, as you said, this job work rate change will impact solar industry, and you rightly pointed out that the energy sector or the solar power sector has seen a rate reduction. So, in that industry, because we have a good exposure of that industry, we understand that the change is there on the goods. The solar products have seen a rate change, but this industry, the huge revenue which comes in this industry is from the EPC contracts, where the deliverables are not only the goods, but there's installation, commissioning of the project in all, where the goods also go, but the whole setup activities also on the part of the provider. Those EPC contracts, to my understanding, right now have a valuation mechanism where 70% is is a decided proportion of goods and 30% is services. Now, because that 30% cost or the proportion has seen a rate reduction, how will it impact the EPC contracts which are being acted upon by the industry
So you
players?
mean that 70% has the rate reduction has
Correct.
happened, but 30% has not happened. Yes, correct. So yeah, uh, I think if you would go to a slightly up, yeah, this entry, chapter 84, 85, 94, where earlier rate was 5% in respect of solar power generating systems and windmills and wind operated energy plants, solar lanterns, solar lamp, Okay. Sorry, I think my internet was I think now I think all of you should you're able to see me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Few minutes it was, few seconds it was, connectivity was lost.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah.
Shuji, if you can, yes, open the screen. Yes. So, Abhi, because of that 70-30, that still continues. Yesterday, we received a query from somebody where we were told by one of the prominent players of the industry that now 70-30 would not be there. So, no, that's not the case. 70-30 would continue. On the 70% value, the rate reduces from 12% to 5%. On the 30% rate continues to be 18%. So if up till 22nd of September, in respect of EPC contracts, if the effective rate was 13.8%, now that 13.8% rate reduces to 8.9%. So that is going to be the impact in respect where the installation is being done along with supply. If it is a pure supply, then obviously rate reduces from 12% to 5%.
There's an
Solar,
effective rate
this is
reduction
going
in
to be,
EPC contracts also.
yeah, yeah, Shuchi.
Yes, continue.
Yeah, Solar wanted one thing, which still they do not, they haven't been able to actually reach to the right ears at the GST Council. They wanted some sort of clarity in respect of corporate guarantee, though it is totally unrelated topic. But what I'm told that was one of the important points to which they had gone to the council and told council that the manner in which the solar industry works, they have to make SPV entities, and those SPV entities are backed by a holding company, and holding company for the purpose of having a bank financing arrangement, they have to give corporate guarantee. And because in respect of solar, the outward supply is exempted, so the problem is that we have a deemed valuation provision of 1% per annum. When a corporate guarantee is deemed to be given by holding to a subsidiary company, that becomes a cost, and that is actually adding up to the cost of execution of those EPC contracts. So ultimately, that cost of electricity increases because that all of that gets factored into the cost of electricity. So that's a problem that is not answered here. But yeah, otherwise in respect of solar, that rate reduces. The good thing which has otherwise also happened, Shuchi, here is that there is a reduction in the rate of batteries also. So if let's say I am installing a solar power generating system and everything, earlier batteries were taxable at 28%. So now that also reduces to 18%. And any which way solar panels and everything, that also reduces to 5%. So we have we know that in the market all these solar inverters and everybody, they have a product where they have a battery, they have a solar panel, they have a charge control and everything, and they're giving it together. They had an issue whether it is a composite supply or a mixed supply or a different altogether supply. That issue still persists. But what happens is that now if even if let's say that dispute is there, that now dispute gets restricted only to 18%, whether it will be 5% or 18%. Earlier it was 28% or 12%. Now that reduces to 5% or 18%.
Yeah, correct. It's clear enough. Now we will move on to the another industry, which of course is an important industry in India, which is handicrafts. This industry, the major revenue source of this industry is exports. So the question here from rate rationalization measures, it appears that the rates have been reduced on the handicraft products. So on the output end, there is a reduction in rate, but still what industry is facing is that because it's mostly catering to the international markets, it is facing few conflicts due to the US tariffs because they have become highly incompetitive there due to the uh, exponential tariffs. Now that government of India, as you said in the initial discussion, that the government of India wanted to promote the consumer base in India only. And there's a concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which government is promoting by these rate rationalization measures as well. Because the consumption base had to be increased here, the final output rate has been reduced. As we see here, most products have gone from 12% to 5%, and there's no increase as such here. One issue which the industry faces is that if they are exporting, they'll have their ITC if they're exporting without tax, they'll have their ITC accumulated. And if they're exporting with taxes, their outward, which is not actually payable, but it is a mechanism to get the refund back of the cost which they have incurred. Now, because their outward has a lower rate. So now their outward only has 5% tax liability, but they still have same costs and same tax structures on their inwards. So if that cost structure is higher, and because the kind of industry is such that stock building is required there, whether it be for export, they'll have to be stock ready, or whether it be for domestic availability, they'll have to build up and keep a good stock or inventory. Whether that stock holding or whether these increase in costs like transportation, as we discussed, these increase in costs and the reduction at the outward end, which was a measure to get back those costs in the form of refund, this conflicting position for them, whether it is actually a rationalization measure for the exporters or they'll have a relief, or rather they'll face a bigger conflict by these changes.
So again, I think all of us should keep this mind, and again, that is only our understanding, that this rate rationalization has not happened keeping exporters in mind, and it can be a timing issue, which otherwise would look at it and it is a wrong timing, because any which exporters who are exporting to USA specifically, they are now grappling with that 50% tariff issue. So either they are reducing their prices because all the customers are asking for the benefit, or at least saying that you have to reduce the price to even sustain the business, and there is an uncertainty. Now with this reduced rate, mind you, this rate will not only impact the domestic supplies, but if I'm exporting with payment of tax, again, there is going to be an issue. That issue is that in the automatic route, I'll be able to now only claim refund up to 5% of the transaction value for whatever examples we see on the screen in respect of that particular product. So, and again, because my inward side, again, as I said, barring one or two industries at the inward side, there is not much of a change in respect of how my raw material was costing to me. So raw material rates more or less remains the same, GST rates. So clearly there is going to be a credit accumulation. I may not be able to completely claim the credit, or even if I claim the credit, I may not be able to completely claim a refund of that credit. Okay. So the option now which is going to be available with the exporters is they would be now looking for an option of exporting goods under LUT. तो जहां जहां पर भी रेट रिडक्शन हुआ है आउटवर्ड साइड पे, specifically one example which you are taking is this handicraft sector, there is a possibility that they would look at now exporting goods under LUT and then claiming a refund under LUT. What government has done, one good thing, that in fact GST Council in their recommendation, they have proposed a change in Rule 91(2), where they've said that there was already a provision in the law, Section 54(6), which allowed a refund, 90% refund on a provisional basis within 7 days. They said we'll change the rule also, and all those who are filing refunds after 1st of November 2025 in zero rated category under LUT, they'll be allowed to have the 90% refund on a provisional basis within 7 days. So that is one measure which government has said that we'll do. तो जहां जहां पर भी ड्यूटी इन्वर्जन वाली सिचुएशन थी, स्पेसिफिकली लेट्स से एक्सपोर्ट्स के केस में भी गवर्नमेंट ने ये चीज को इनडायरेक्टली समझा, एंड देव सेड वी विल अलाउ यू टू क्लेम अ रिफंड अंडर एलयूटी, और आप प्रोविजनल बेसिस पे वो पैसा ले सकते हैं. बट उसके बावजूद स्टिल all of us know that if somebody is given an option कि आप export करिए with payment of tax और या फिर आप export करिए under LUT, what would you prefer? The answer will always be that I would prefer to export on payment of IGST, because refund is it's in an automatic route. It is only through filing of a return. I don't have to do anything else. Unfortunately, that situation will change. So this is going to be a lateral impact of this rate reduction on certain industry. One of those is actually going to be handicraft. Maybe textile is also going to be one of those industries where this impact is going to be there.
Okay, sir, it is very clear. Next thing which we will like to have a discussion regarding here is there's a change observed in the hospitality industry also, where the supply of services of accommodation having a room rate of lesser than 7,500, there's a reduction in the rate, and there's some explanation also which has been brought in, and there were some changes which were recently brought for the industry, where in April 2025 the whole concept of specified premises was changed, and now that's brought little clarity on the approach, and now this rate change has again made the route different. So how do we pull it together, and whether it is beneficial for the industry or it is again creating some cost burdens?
Correct. Shuji, we have to change the slide also. Okay. So अभी goods से एक industry, which I think what she is referring to is that one industry which has a negative impact, though there is a reduction in the rate, but that reduction in the rate comes with a condition of no input tax credit to the person who is providing hotel accommodation service. So all of us know that as of now, all the restaurants which are there, standalone restaurants, which are not part of a hotel where the room tariff is more than 7,500. So all standalone restaurants or restaurants part of a hotel which have a lower tariff, there the rate of GST is 5% without any input tax credit. Okay. Now that similar concept has been brought in respect of all the hotels which are providing hotel accommodation service, where the value of the tariff for one room night is going to be less than 7,500. So there the provision is now, if you have a tariff less than 7,500, that means one room of accommodation charges are less than 7,500. The hotel will charge 5% GST, but unfortunately hotel will not get any input tax credit. And today only, unfortunately, in the morning, I got a call from a client. He said, I was building a hotel since last 1.5 years. I have balance in my electronic credit ledger. Now, what am I supposed to do? And we said, unfortunately, sir, you do not have an option available. After 22nd of September, you will have to reverse the credit. तो ही सेड अभी तक तो मैंने कोई बिलिंग ही नहीं किया, मैं तो 2 साल से खर्चा कर रहा हूँ, तो मैंने मेरी कॉस्टिंग के अंदर उसको पकड़ के चला था दैट आई हैव दिस क्रेडिट अवेलेबल. So then I said what government has said. I said पर रेट भी तो कम हो गया, अभी 12% से रेट कम हो गया 5% हो गया. You have a 7% benefit. He did not like my answer. And he said no 7% rate reduction which is there, उसके against में आप देखो what kind of expenditure which I have done. I have a air conditioner, I have toiletries, I have all other types of daily routine expenditures which I have done. I have a manpower agency which I am going to hire. I have a daily cost to run, and all of them are unfortunately taxable at 18%. So effectively, it means my cost plus 18% plus my sale margin 5% tax. That is going to be the effective GST rate now. So I said, okay, chalo, but that's how the law it is. He said, अभी एक और amendment हुआ था अप्रैल के अंदर, April 25 में. He says, yes, there was an amendment in April 25. That is, they amended the definition of specified premise. And they said, if in the previous financial year, even for one day, if any of your rooms had a value of room accommodation service more than 7,500, then you have to charge 18% GST on your restaurant services with ITC in the current year. That was an amendment which was brought with effect from April 2025. So if somebody, let's say, had a room tariff of more than 7,500 even for a room for a single day in the previous year, then this year they have to charge 18% GST on the complete restaurant sales, and they are entitled to credit. Abhi tak they were happy with this. But now from 22nd of September, what will happen? Now they will have three structures. One is room tariff more than 7,500, 18% tax with ITC. Room tariff less than 7,500, 5% tax, no ITC. Restaurant sales, 18% tax, complete ITC. Okay. So I might have a room today of less than 7,500. I might have a room tomorrow which is more than 7,500. Okay. Then in that case, I have to apply that complicated formula of Rule 42. Now I have to keep a record on a room basis of my all capital goods. कि वो capital goods का मेरे को proportionate ITC लेना है कि मुझे पूरा input tax credit लेना है. Hotel has to also take care of section 18, whereas under section 18(4), which specifically says that I have to reverse my credit of proportionate input tax credit in respect of capital goods, which I have claimed because now my supply becomes an exempt supply for the purpose of ITC reversal. So it is going to be a situation which is going to be complicated for all those hotels which were a low budget hotels, or all those hotels which could only gather a value of more than 7,500 at the season timing. In off season timing, they were recovering only less than 7,500. There it is going to be a problem. There is going to be one more problem in terms of whether they should treat their restaurant sales and room sales as composite supplies, which generally we understand it is a composite supply, whether they are independent supplies, or whether mixed supply may not be the correct answer to this case. But that's what revenue has been chasing since last 2 years. So in respect of hotels, this is going to be a little complicated situation in terms of bookkeeping and determining what is going to be their actual cost per day.
Understood.
But mind
So,
you, sorry, I'm interrupting. As a recipient, I will still get the credit of the hotel accommodation service. This no ITC is only for the supplier. As a recipient, I am still entitled to claim credit of that hotel accommodation service.
that goes for every rate. Wherever a rate has been mentioned without ITC, that is for the supplier who is providing this service and not the recipient of these supplies. Okay, so now what you explained, the changes regarding accommodation, whether restaurants also have this, have to relook into this, or their rate, a standalone restaurants, they have a specific rate of 5% without ITC only.
Yeah, they have a standard rate of 5% without ITC. There was one anomaly which was brought in the manner in which specified premise was defined. That one of the clauses C of specified premise, it was written in a manner, if let's say I'm opening a new premises, and if I want to declare within 15 days at the time of taking registration that I am a specified premise, then I can do so. So all standalone restaurants, they took a view by saying, if let's say I'm opening a new restaurant, I will declare myself as a specified premise and I will start charging 18%. GST Council said, no, we never intended to do that. So they said, we'll bring an explanation in the definition of specified premise, and where we will specifically restrict all the restaurants that they will not be able to tell that they are part of a specified premise.
Understood. Now, moving from hospitality and going to, because we've already discussed restaurants, there was a conflicting position already where for ice cream parlors, back some time, the government took a contrary view, keeping aside the cloud kitchens or restaurants in a 5% bracket without ITC, but taking a contrary position for ice cream parlors, saying that they are taxable on the as a supply of goods and having a tax rate of 18%. Now, in this GST Council meeting, there's a rate rationalization on ice creams also.
Correct.
Here
So
on the window, as we see, the rate goes from 18% to 5%.
to 5%. Correct,
So
correct,
now
correct.
whether this also comes up with an agenda of clarifying the issue of goods or services, or it is just a rate reduction that these are still goods, but the rate goes from 18 to 5.
But I think that's not how we do the classification. A rate will not determine whether it is a supply of goods or a service. The essence of the transaction will determine. So what you are trying to ask is an absolutely right question, but unfortunately, the concept is still quite different. And again, as a tax professional, as a student of tax, and somebody who's complying with tax, all of us know that this is something which is that's the beauty of tax, that it appears to be same but they're different. So the answer is, if a manufacturer is giving an ice cream to an ice cream parlor, it will be supply of goods 5% with ITC. But if an ice cream parlor which works like a restaurant where they have a sitting capacity and anything of that sort, they will have to determine and ask a question whether they are supplying goods as ice cream or they're giving a service of serving an ice cream. There is an issue around it. That was an issue around it. Then a circular came. Unfortunately, the law enforcement agencies are still not happy with the circular and they're trying to figure out their own ways to say that all ice cream parlors are restaurants. But the answer is, if you are a restaurant and supplying an ice cream, then it is 5% tax without ITC. There is no change for you. If you are a manufacturer and then giving an ice cream, or you are a shopkeeper and then giving an ice cream, a retailer and then giving an ice cream, then it is a supply of goods. Then for you, the rate reduces from 18% to 5% with ITC. So that's the difference which
For the
will
ice
still
cream,
continue.
for the ice cream parlors, you are stating there's no change and the rate goes 5% without ITC. But the circular earlier has clarified that the ice cream parlors which have a setup, they also have that benefit of whatever rate with ITC. So that still goes 5% with ITC, right?
Correct. So if you follow that circular, then they for them the benefit is there. It is 5% with ITC.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it is going to be
Does
very
this
difficult.
analogy? Yeah, it's still a conflicting position because revenue can still have that argument, and maybe now, in light of the present rate, they may not find the circular binding. So maybe there's
Correct.
again a need of council to deliberate upon the
Correct.
issue.
Absolutely right.
Whether this interpretation regarding ice creams also has an impact on the setups which are providing bakery and confectionery,
Yes,
to
yes,
your understanding?
absolutely. So what you're saying is again makes sense. And we have some of the participants from that particular industry also, where if they are, let's say, running a bakery shop and a high-end bakery shop, where if let's say they are giving bread. So now whether they are supplying bread or they are serving bread. If they are supplying bread, so now rate reduces on that. If it's an Indian bread, then now it becomes an exempt. It becomes exempt. But if they are serving bread, then it still continues to remain 5% without ITC because they become a restaurant. So again, rate change will not basically determine their classification. Their classification is still dependent on the concept whether they are serving it or they are selling it. That is going to be the pivotal point to determine whether ITC would be available or not.
It's still a question of law which needs to be well settled
Correct,
before
correct.
the
Rate
court is
reduction
suggested.
will not answer this.
Okay. To further go on the rate rationalization measures before we go on discussing the other aspects of the GST Council meeting, I think the things which we need to highlight or the industries which we need to highlight are textile has a huge number of products which have seen rate reduction, whether it be even industrial textiles. For example, laminated fabrics have seen a rate change, which goes from 12 to 5%. There are carpets which have seen a rate reduction, mats and mettings. These are all textile products manufactured at large scale in Indian industries. So all of these have seen a rate reduction. Besides that, at the retail end, what I could observe, interestingly, because I had to observe it, that the fashion clothing, which is apparel and clothing, the high end in the retail sector, not high end, not luxury, but
Shuchi, you're mute.
sorry. Now, am I audible?
Yes.
So, except the industrial textiles, the clothing, apparel and clothing industry has also seen a rate change where there's a reduction at certain point, but there's an increase as well. So the products which have been priced at 2,500 or higher, there is an increase in rate. And wherever they are lower than 25%, then there is a rate of 5%. So that is also dominant change if we see consumption, because government has been focusing that they are focusing on increasing the consumption base. But now there's a price band also in certain products which are again in retail. If we consider footwear and apparel is a huge industry, and in both the cases government has made this slab where lower than that they are increasing the consumption base, or they're focusing on increasing the consumption base by reducing the rate. But at the other end, considering the products more than priced more than 2,500, they are considering it for the higher tax rate, and they've increased the tax rate there from 12 to 18. Besides that, as we discussed, textile and footwear, both industries have seen that change. Besides that, so these are the industries which have been specified here and which have seen a rate change.
I
Any
think,
particular industry which you've seen? Yeah.
yeah, we have one question of this inverted duty. This question was asked, I think, by Sharadji. In respect of agri products, he said that now the inward is taxable at 18, was taxable at 18, and now it reduces to 5%. So what happens? So in fact, that is not only restricted to agriculture products, but that's an issue which everybody was going to be there. And there is one question in respect of anti-profiteering which Dinesh Gupta ji has asked. He said, now, you tell me how can I enforce my supplier to reduce the tax? I think these two are the questions which
Yes,
are
that
going to
will
be of
come up.
utmost importance, right?
Yeah, we are coming on that
Yes.
actually now.
Yes.
So once we're clear with the fact that there are reductions on the outward end majorly, and the costs or the tax structures at the inward end of the manufacturers or traders remains the same. The bigger question here is whether the intention which we are speaking of, that the government of India wants to increase the consumer base, whether those consumers will actually get the benefit of this price reduction, question one. And to really bring it into effect, is there any legal provision which is binding the industries to pass on this benefit? Are there any modalities, like what is the benefit? How will the industry compute that benefit? And whether their costs and their credit accumulations will also be well considered before imposing, if at all law is imposing, or if not imposing, even if it is expected from them to pass on those benefits, are they also given any kind of relief to consider the ITC accumulation, which you rightly pointed out, due to duty inversion they will have? So अगर उनकी क्रेडिट्स बढ़ रही हैं, या उनके स्टॉक पे ऑलरेडी बहुत ज्यादा क्रेडिट्स हैं, उनके सर्विसेज पे क्रेडिट्स बढ़ रही हैं, तो whether they are actually in a position to pass on the benefits on their finished goods, or how does law envisage all this?
Okay, you can come to anti-profiteering tab on your website. Okay.
Sure.
So it's a problem. It's a why it is a problem. So we have to understand it maybe from a consumer's perspective. बाद में फिर we'll talk about from the industry perspective. Well, from the consumer perspective, obviously, all of us know insurance के ऊपर, health insurance, life insurance, the rates have reduced to nil. So now everybody is saying, okay, now my premium amount is going to reduce because now the rates have reduced. Interestingly, when government came out with a press release, government came out with a FAQ also, 75 questions FAQ. And it has happened for the first time, at least what I have seen, कि government ने जो भी press release निकाला, उसके साथ में 75 क्वेश्चन का FAQ भी निकाला. That FAQ you can access on the website also. It's on the extreme right. In that FAQ, one question was asked कि आपने कुछ products पे बिल्कुल nil rate क्यों नहीं करा? You should have done that to give the benefit to the customer. Government admitted this, that if you exempt something, then the supplier has to reverse the ITC. And when they reverse the ITC, what happens is it becomes part of the cost. So the benefit is not given to the consumer completely. Hence, that is why हमने उसको zero नहीं करा. So when the government is admitting this, and in fact, if you would remember, our honorable finance minister, when there was a GST Council meeting at Jaisalmer last year, एक एक सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर एक चीज वायरल भी हुआ था, वेयर मैडम वाज ट्राइंग टू एक्सप्लेन दिस कॉन्सेप्ट, बट दैट कॉन्सेप्ट वाज टेकन इन अ लाइटर सेंस बाय एवरीबody else when she tried to explain this, that if you exempt something, then the cost goes up because that credit becomes part of the cost only. Anti-profiteering as a measure, it was part of the statute book. It is still part of the statute book. There is section 171 in CGST Act. 171 of the CGST Act, which specifically says that anti-profiteering says that wherever there is a reduction in the output side, or in case you're getting any additional input tax credit, then you have to pass it on to your customer. The problem is we have a sunset clause in the anti-profiteering. And there was a notification issued in October where they said that 31st of March 2025 is going to be the last date where any new matter can be taken up before the anti-profiteering authority. So to answer this question, there is today, as on date, we have a section, but that section has a sunset clause. Because of that, now no new complaint can be taken before any anti-profiteering authority. We had National Anti-Profiteering Authority, then we had Competition Commission of India, then we had GSTAT and all those things. But now अभी कोई नया केस वो नहीं ले सकते. तो ये सवाल सरकार को पूछा गया प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में कि एंटी प्रॉफिटरिंग का प्रोविजन नहीं है और आपने इतना बड़ा रेट रिडक्शन किया है, हाउ विल यू इंश्योर दैट इट इज पास्ड ऑन टू द कस्टमर? गवर्नमेंट आंसर्ड दिस बाय सेइंग कि हमने पीछे जो एंटी प्रॉफिटरिंग के केसेस थे उनको एनालाइज करा. नंबर ऑफ केसेस वर हैंडफुल, और उसमें जो टोटल एंटी प्रॉफिटरिंग का जो एलिगेशन था वो लगभग 3 से 4 हजार करोड़ का ही था. सो नॉट अ वेरी बिग नंबर कंसिडरिंग जिस तरीके का जब जीएसटी आया था. So they said what we understood that industry at large had passed on the benefit to the customer. And because they had passed on the benefit to the customer, so we understand that now also demand supply will take care of it and people will indulge into ethical practice. So government has left this for the people to decide and for the market to decide that how much they will pass. They will pass the amount ethically. They will pass the amount considering the whole concept. Then the question was also asked, but if there is no anti-profiteering, then whether government will do anything? They said, no, we will still be in contact with the state authorities and the central authorities and we'll see to it that it is passed on. But अगर आप वैसे देखेंगे तो कोई इसका लीगल मैंडेट आज की डेट में है नहीं. अगर आप पीछे जाके देखेंगे एंटी प्रॉफिटरिंग का कॉन्सेप्ट कहता क्या है, दैट द कॉन्सेप्ट सेज इफ देयर इज अ रिडक्शन इन द रेट यू हैव टू पास इट ऑन, यू हैव टू डेमोन्स्ट्रेट दिस. So if there is MRP based taxation or let's say the selling or the goods are being sold based on the MRP, then in that case the supplier or the retailer from whom we are going to buy goods, he has to actually revise the MRP in respect of all those goods uske stock mein pade as on 22nd of September 2025. The manufacturer who basically gets the benefit, if at all, he has to pass on the benefit by issuing a credit note to the dealer in the chain. The dealer has to pass on the benefit to the retailer, and the retailer has to revise the MRP. The price list has to change. The vendor master quotation list, that has to change. But again, all of this had a statutory backing in terms of Section 171, where people knew that there is an authority before whom I can go and I can complain that benefit is not being passed on today. As of now, today, there is no authority. There is no provision. Okay. So government is relying on the past practice. We understand also that bigger players have come forward. Amul, today morning only, Amul gave a statement by saying that they will pass on the benefit of reduced rate to the customers. Insurance companies are any which way saying that they're assessing this and they will pass on the benefit. The point is the benefit which will be passed on to the customer, it may not be the benefit of complete reduction in rate. अगर कहीं पर 6% का रेट कम हुआ है या कहीं पर मान लीजिए 7% का रेट कम हुआ है, इट इज नॉट नेसेसरी दैट कंप्लीट 7% विल बी पास्ड ऑन, क्योंकि उसके अगेंस्ट में आईटीसी का कहीं नुकसान भी हुआ है. बट otherwise also market would take care of it. The answer is not there in the statute book in this regard. That's the answer to this.
What is the practice which you suggest? Because the rate changes are coming on 22nd September only, and we are here with our clients and with people in our daily contact. What is your suggestion regarding the pricing policies and the changes which one should consider?
Absolutely. I think be it that there is anti-profiting provision or there is no anti-profiting provision, all those who are into this model where ultimately you know that your goods are being sold to the ultimate customer, you have to go back to your table, see to it कि आप supply chain में कहाँ पर आते हैं, as a manufacturer आते हैं, distributor आते हैं, कि dealer आते हैं, कि retailer आते हैं, and you take necessary actions. अगर past में जाके आप anti-profiteering की compliances देखेंगे, and I think that we have put on this website also in respect of what manufacturer is required to do, what dealer is required to, and what distributor is required to do. In all these cases, basically, the requirement is that as a manufacturer, you assess the benefit and you pass it on in form of a credit note. As a distributor, you see to it that that benefit of credit note is being passed on to the dealer, and dealer sees to it that there is a revision in the MRP which takes place. That's point number one. So there has to be a complete chain of documentation as to how calculation has been done, what has been the basis of doing that calculation, and basis that calculation, if at all, let's say I am losing out on an input tax credit, I'd make an adjustment of it. माइंड यू पुराने वाले जितने भी एंटी प्रॉफिटरिंग के केसेस है वहां पर आईटीसी का जो नुकसान है उसको फैक्टर इन करने के लिए अलाउ नहीं किया एंटी प्रॉफिटरिंग अथॉरिटी ने. They have not allowed that. They have said if there is a rate reduction, you have to pass on the benefit. Okay. But if you would look into a commercial sense, my understanding would always be that the outward side benefit which I have vis-a-vis whatever loss I have on the inward side, I make a net of it. And then if there is any benefit, I pass it on to my consumer.
Understood. Okay, so this anti-profiteering measures and the sunset clause of anti-profiteering or NAPA right now makes the position clear that how do we have to go about the pricing considering the rate changes. Besides pricing, because we only have a window of 4th to 22nd September, we want to deliberate here upon the measures which everybody should be aware of during this transitional period, where today their products are taxable at a higher rate. They're standing in a going concern business where they have already procured certain raw materials, manufactured certain finished goods, and now they know that their procurements are maybe on the floor or going on the floor, and their finished goods cycle is this and everything. And that cycle, the industrialists observe that there's a little hampered cycle of sales and production. What do you suggest how every, not a particular industry, but how industry at large should act in this intermediate transitional period about their inventory management measures, their production, or let's say supply chain cycle, and what are those factors which they should be aware of?
Okay, two things. So one, when we were talking about anti-profiteering in a transitional phase, one bigger problem which all of us were going to have is that purchases at a higher rate and selling at a lower rate wherever rate reduction has taken place. Specifically, again, a dealer distributor model. There we have to come to the concept of refund, inverted duty refund. So if you can click on refund. So now on that refund, the problem is, and I think this was the question which was asked by Sharat ji also in starting in context of agricultural goods. The question which he asked is कि अभी refund मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा inverted duty के केस में, specifically wherever we have wherever the rate at the inward side is higher and the rate at the outward side was lower, or in fact when I purchase at 12%, and when I'm selling at I'm selling at let's say 5%. There the problem is
To pinpoint, when you
yeah,
deliberate, you are right now deliberating upon the traders who have
traders,
procured the
correct.
goods at
Correct. Absolutely right, Shruti. Thank you for pinpointing this. So if I'm, let's say I've bought same goods at 12% and then I'm selling at 5%. तो मेरे पास जो क्रेडिट अक्यूमुलेशन है, जैसा उन्होंने एग्रीकल्चर गुड्स के बारे में बोला, तो क्या मैं रिफंड क्लेम कर सकता हूँ? Well, the legal answer to this is yes, but unfortunately government is not ready on it. And there is a government circular number 135 oblique 20 oblique 2020 dated 31st of March 2020, where in para number 3 they have specifically pinpointed this situation and they have given an answer by saying कि नहीं आप refund claim नहीं कर सकते. They've said if you have bought at a higher rate and you are selling at a lower rate, GST rate, then this is not a situation which would lead to this duty inversion situation, or because of rate on inputs being higher than rate on output, because the product is same. So their logic is अगर आपका product same है तो आप inverted duty में fall नहीं करते. But on the very same issue, we have a Guwahati High Court judgment in respect of PMG Informatics, which clearly says that if, and they have referred to this circular also, और वो circular को उसके contrary जाते हुए they have given a view by saying, when you read the law says when my input is at a higher rate and my outward is at a lower rate, then I qualify for my inverted duty refund, and then the formula needs to be followed. So the judgment says there is nowhere it is mentioned in the law कि आपका product अगर same है तो आप refund नहीं file कर सकते. So to answer this question, yes, refund is allowed, but at the lower level we will see the resistance. At the lower level, because tax officers are bound by the circular and they have to follow the circular, it is binding on them. So they will follow the circular. So till the time the circular is not quashed in the High Court, at a lower level, you cannot expect a favorable refund order. But that does not mean that you should not file a refund. You should file a refund. You should take the matter to the appeal. And there is all the merits on the reading of the law backed by a High Court judgment which says that refund would be allowed in all these cases. But you rightly asked the question, what should be the inventory management? Well, the answer is obviously the inventory management would say that you should have very minimum inventory available on the date of transition. Okay. But having said that, that is easier said than done, because it's a continuous economy. You can't stop economic operations between 4th September till 22nd of September. That's not possible. And you should not advise clients also by saying कि आप purchase sale बंद कर दीजिए या minimum कर दीजिए. That was something which government should have considered while they were bringing these changes in the rate, that how quickly they can implement this, specifically when government was very clear that they wanted to reduce the rates. In spite of all of this, probably one or two things which I think all of us should do is, we should first go back and check our agreements wherever we have long-term rate agreements, that there is a concept of change in law, and this is a situation of change in law. And because of change in law, is there a requirement to renegotiate the agreement, renegotiate the price? So this clearly, that change in law concept kicks in here in respect of all long-term agreements. This is one aspect that needs to be taken care of, that the prices needs to be renegotiated. Second is to see to it where inventory movement can be done. So let's say if I am a manufacturer and if I'm giving goods to a distributor, and if let's say distributor would be unable to sell it, can I call back my inventory from the distributor? And if I can call back the inventory and again resend it after the rate change which takes place, then in those cases I'll be able to explain. Obviously, that transaction has to be documented and that transaction has to be actually executed by the actual movement of goods. But if that can be done, then the impact of rate reduction can be minimized. Third is an alternative way where somebody can look at it whether I can send goods on approval basis. So let's say if today if I'm sending goods to my distributor on sale basis, can I determine to send those goods on an approval basis? So I tell my distributor that as and when you sell the goods to the retailer further, and accordingly distributor enters into an agreement with the retailer, as and when they sell the goods on on actual sale basis, then I would make my purchase invoice. This is called as a concept of continuous supply of goods. I can enter into a concept of a continuous supply of goods. Even if I don't enter into a concept of continuous supply of goods, still there is a provision under section 31 which allows me to send goods on an approval basis. I can send on approval basis on a delivery challan without paying any tax. And as and when the sale takes place, I only bill that inventory, and the balance inventory I call back. So again, that is one way where my tax would not be involved in basically undertaking this transaction. But this inventory management, everybody has to look into it, because we can only suggest from the tax perspective. The other aspects, whether you can really look for a place near the place of a distributor and you can store your inventory there. Let's say you take a place on rent, as make it your additional place of business, and you send goods to that additional place of business. So they remain in your possession only. And then you send goods from there to your distributor. And as in when you realize that they have an inventory, you call it back immediately so that you're able to save your logistics cost. Because main problem is that logistics cost and the timing. If you're able to reduce that logistics cost, bring it back to the warehouse, and as in when the rate change takes place, then you again rebill it and resend those goods to the distributor. Again, that can be one way of looking at this concept. So there are multiple ways to do it, to look into it. Refund is obviously one way to see to it, but there is going to be a problem in the refund.
Okay. Now, once industries deal with this transitional period and plan their pricing and their inventories accordingly, they also have to be ready for that date. Because once that date kicks in, everything has to be implemented on the go. So on 22nd September, whatever scale you're operating it at, your products have to be go with the revised rate. They have to be billed accordingly. Your documents have to have the revised rates. Even if you're aware, those documentation aspects also have to be taken care of. So how should industry be ready for that date also?
ये नहीं ये पहनेगा क्या
Okay. How should industry be ready? Well, one surprising thing again, which we believe that government should have taken care of. Somebody should have advised the government that this rate change should have come in the month starting. It should have been from 1st October. Though 22nd is the date which has been chosen, considering the Navratra as being one of those dates where the buying takes place. But the problem is that businesses work on ERP. We have a lot of clients who are working on SAP. So tell the client कि आप 22 तारीख को SAP में change करो, and you make it. You have to do it because obviously you can't delay it. So do it in the middle of a month, and in the middle of the year itself is a very challenging task, but that needs to be done. So obviously 3-4 things that needs to be done. One is you should have minimum goods on the date of transition, which is taking minimum goods in transit. So your movement, if it is possible that you can reduce the movement of goods which are in transit on 21st and 22nd, that would be better, because you will have an e-way bill from an earlier rate, you will have an invoice from an earlier rate. By the time goods reach to the customer, the rate change would have happened. The customer would have a question, why are you sending it with a higher rate and all those things. तो आपको वहां पर सेक्शन 14 उनको एक्सप्लेन करने की जरूरत पड़ेगी कि टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई के प्रोविजंस क्या कहते हैं. वन इज ऑब्वियसली you plan the movement of goods in a manner that the goods are not in transit on 21st or 22nd. That's number one. Obviously, an ERP change effective from 12 a.m. in the morning from 22nd is going to be the second thing which would be required. Obviously, you wait for the notification. Don't do anything till the notification doesn't come in. Though government has clarified, council has said it will be applicable on 22nd, but notification will come on 21st or maybe 18th or 19th of that sort. So that is going to be third. Fourth is that wherever possible that you have a transaction impact in terms of debit note, credit note to be issued for period prior to 22nd of September. You close them prior to 22nd of September only. Don't issue after 22nd of September. Because the problem is then the rate change would have happened. एंड आप क्रेडिट नोट डेबिट नोट अगर कोई भी जीएसटी का इशू करने वाले हैं तो आप 22 तारीख के बाद इशू करेंगे जब रेट चेंज हो चुका होगा. दैट पुट्स अस इनटू अ सिचुएशन वेयर actually that comes into the government scrutiny, because जब governmental official will do your audit or scrutiny, he will do it after 2 years. तो आज की डेट में आप जब ट्रांजेक्शन कर रहे हैं, जब आप उसको 2 साल बाद समझाने जाएंगे, सो द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज कि आपने क्यों बाद में करा, आपने पहले क्यों नहीं करा. So when we know we can preempt all these questions, it does make a lot of sense that we know that we can close and conclude these transactions. Specifically, if you are a service provider and there is a rate change which is taking place, like works contract में earthwork के case में there is a rate change, transportation के case में there is a rate change, job work में there is a rate change. Ensure that you take care of section 14 very seriously. Shuchi, we can go to time of supply provisions. We take care of that transitional provision in terms of invoicing, which is very important, which says तीन में से कोई भी दो चीजें हैं, अगर आपकी पहले हो गई है रेट चेंज से पहले तो आपकी पुरानी रेट लगेगी, और अगर दो चीजें बाद में हो रही है तो आपकी नई रेट लगेगी. तीन चीजें हैं, कंप्लीशन ऑफ सप्लाई, सेकेंड इज इनवॉइसिंग एंड थर्ड इज बिलिंग. तो अगर लेट्स से आप माल का मूवमेंट शुरू कर चुके हैं और आप बिलिंग कर चुके हैं और वो सब आप 22 तारीख से पहले कर चुके हैं तो पुरानी रेट ही लगेगी, वॉट एवर बी द ओल्ड रेट, 12, 18, 5, वॉट एवर इज द रेट. बट अगर आपने सिर्फ बिल बना के रखा हुआ है और माल का डिस्पैच आपने 22 तारीख के बाद करा है और आपको पैसा नहीं मिला है 22 तारीख से पहले, देन इन दैट केस आपके ऊपर ओल्ड रेट नहीं लगेगी, आप पे न्यू रेट लगेगी. सो द डिस्पैच शुड हैव हैपेंड बिफोर 22nd, invoicing should have been done before 22nd, then the old rate will be applicable. But if only invoicing has been done but dispatch is not done and amount is not received, then a new rate would be applicable. Similarly, in terms of services, if you have actually executed the work and you have made the invoice by 22nd, before 22nd, then old rate will be applicable. But if you have only made the invoice or you have only executed the work but you are raising the invoice subsequently, then a new rate would be applicable. Obviously, I'm not considering the payments. If you've already received the advance payment in respect of service and you have executed the work, then obviously old rate would be applicable. So, तीन में से any दो you should take care of. It is very important because what happens is all these transitional periods, governmental officer has one discretion, that is to determine when have you executed the transaction. Invoice आप कब बनाएंगे, that is in your hands because you will make an e-invoice. Payment is generally, you don't do payment terms settlement before, so that is generally done afterwards. So what is left as a determining factor will determine whether old rate will be applicable or new rate will be applicable is the execution of your transaction. When are you executing the transaction? If you're executing before the rate change and invoice is there, then perfect, old rate. But if you're executing afterwards and making an invoice earlier, then a new rate would be applicable. So that needs to be taken care of.
Understood. So that date is relevant and the time of supply provisions are very relevant to consider the applicability of new rate. Okay. Going forward, one more important aspect which I observed that due to this change has to be effected in the upcoming returns or the initial returns after this filing is, as you rightly pointed out, that there's a rate change from 18 to 0 in insurance. And similarly, in hospitality also we discussed that there are rate changes where without ITC rates have been inserted. And we are well aware when some neutral rate or rates with ITC do switch to without ITC, that change is also considered as exempted for the purposes of ITC reversal at least, which is already accumulated, which is already held. So now when some goods or services, any supply goes from taxable to exempt, what happens to the credits which are already there, or which the stock or the capital goods which are already there procured at the time where the output supply was taxable?
So yeah, that's a problem. And in fact, this was also one of the questions which was highlighted to us in last 2 days, where somebody told us, I am a dealer. Now my goods are becoming exempt from 22nd. So I have already paid the tax. So do I have to reverse it? We said, unfortunately, that's what 18.4 says. You have to reverse it. He said, that's a direct loss to me. That I should not have paid the tax. But the concept is, if the government is not going to get any tax in respect of those goods, then whatever tax credit you have accumulated, you have to give it back to the government. And because whatever credit we take, it is subject to the terms, to the restrictions and the conditions which are there. So it's an availment and a reversal situation which comes from the law only. So the answer is, अगर आपका कोई supply exempted होने वाला है, like for example hotels, like for example food items, like for example aggregate products, then in all, like for example paper which will be used for the purpose of graph and textbooks and all those things, और अगर आपके पास स्टॉक है, चाहे रॉ मटेरियल के फॉर्म में, चाहे फिनिश गुड्स के फॉर्म में, चाहे सेमी फिनिश गुड्स के फॉर्म में, then in then in that case you have to identify what is the input tax credit involved in those goods on that date of transition which is there, and you have to reverse the credit and you have to put that in your return. इफ यू हैव अ क्रेडिट ऑफ कैपिटल गुड्स, और वो कैपिटल गुड्स आपने पिछले 5 साल के अंदर अंदर खरीदे हुए, और नाउ दोस कैपिटल गुड्स आर गोइंग टू बी यूज्ड फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ सप्लाइंग और exempted goods, then in that case also you will have to reverse your input tax credit in respect of those capital goods, but on a proportionate basis. उसका एक formula है, 5% per quarter you have to treat कि that was a valid credit, and the balance credit of whatever months are left to complete that 5 years, you have to reverse the credit. So I'm not going into the formula. 4 things you have to reverse: credit in your raw material, credit in your semi-finished goods, credit in your finished goods, and credit which is there in your capital goods if the capital goods were purchased in last 5 years. No reversal of credit in respect of input services is required. If you have received an input service, then in that case it is assumed that you have consumed that service the date on which you have received, and that is not part of your stock. So uska reversal is not required, but in all other cases reversal would be required. That becomes part of your cost.
And that reversal has to be done in the immediate returns.
Correct.
Is there any specific compliance, or it will go into the monthly returns which will be filed after
It
September?
will go into monthly return.
Okay. Going forward, although we have, while discussing handicrafts, we have discussed exporters, and we've pointed out that during these rate rationalization measures, government has not really considered exporters in their planning. Do you think export refunds still have some beneficial measures announced for them, and what are those?
They are similar to in inverted duty structure. Government said कि हम inverted duty के refund को expedite कर देंगे. We'll make the law changes, but don't wait for the law changes. From 1st November, we will ensure that you get a provisional refund based on the risk parameters, 90% refund in inverted duty. What government did not address कि आपको अभी भी input services capital goods का refund नहीं मिलेगा inverted duty में. That is in respect of inverted duty. In respect of exporters, government said similar provision, that provision already exists of 90% refund within 7 days. हम rule के अंदर amendment लेके आएंगे. That's one. And second, all those who are doing e-commerce exports, जहाँ पर the refund value per consignment is less than 1,000, but because they do the exports in bulk, so that the volume of the transaction is higher, and that is why that one less than 1,000 as a total quantum becomes very high. उसके केस में आज की डेट में provision was there that refund amount less than 1,000 is not allowed. That was a restriction. Now government, that representation went to the government. All these suppliers through e-commerce explained it to the government. Government agreed to it, and now they have made a change by saying that refund would also be allowed. So these are small changes in terms of refund, more in terms of incentivizing the suppliers, or be it under inverted duty or export, to say, come and claim refund. We don't want to keep the credit with us on technical grounds, or we don't want to held up your credits and add to the worry of your working capital. Easier said than done. On the ground level, all of us know that the officer still holds the discretion. If he decides that he does not want to give refund within 7 days, based on certain parameters that he can write in his file, and he can ensure that he takes complete 2 months to do this.
Okay. Except refunds, there's some ease of compliance in registration procedure also. If you could throw some light on that.
That will be too early to say, but yeah, two things. All those who are e-commerce supplying through e-commerce, excuse me for the bad throat. So all the suppliers of supplying through e-commerce, the point is government has said कि आप जहां जहां आपका e-commerce का warehouse है, you have to take a registration there if you want to store goods. Now that becomes a very big problem, because we know taking a registration is a very Herculean task. Government has in principle given an approval that will ease out the registration procedures for them. So it's just an in principle approval right now. The modalities of it will be decided in the coming GST Council meeting. That's point number one. One, for all small scale taxpayers, where they voluntarily come forward and tell the government that I will pay a tax of not more than 2.5 lakh rupees per month, and I want to go into an automatic scheme of determining, doing the assessment and filing my returns. Their government said, okay, we'll devise out a mechanism where, on the basis of your declaration that you are a small taxpayer, your tax quotient will be less than 2.5 lakh rupees per month. You come forward, file a registration application, and we'll give a registration within 3 days to you. Otherwise, we know today practically getting a registration within 3 days is next to impossible, because they have a post verification, pre verification, document verification, mismatches, and all those things. That's an optional scheme. Again, we should not comment too much on this. Let the scheme come, let the modalities come, and then probably we'll be in a better situation to answer this question.
Now, as we've already discussed exporters, but that was more in light of goods. One change or one big measure which was taken by the council here on board was that there's a provision for place of supply in IGST Act presently, which says that the place of supply for intermediary services will be the location of supplier. So Section 13 right now deals with it, where Section 13 tells the place of supply for a transaction where either the supplier or recipient, one of them is located outside India and one is located in India. So when there's a structure that there's an Indian entity and a foreign entity involved, and one of them qualifies to be an intermediary. Intermediary is a concept in IGST Act which is well defined, that where someone is performing something to bring two people have a transaction but not on his own account, then he or that entity is said to be an intermediary. And for intermediary services, right now the law provides that the place of supply is the location of supplier. So when the entity is located in India and its services qualifies to be intermediary services, due to the POS being India itself, that transaction does not qualify to be export of services, but it becomes taxable in India and it gets taxed. Even when most of the services where foreign exchange is coming and the recipient is located outside India, they are, by a plain understanding of law, they are export of services, but only intermediary, not only, but majorly these intermediary people, they were facing this backlash where their services were being taxed in India. So there's a change in this provision where this POS for intermediary services being LOS, the POS, it is being omitted now. That provision is being omitted. So now whether the place of supply will be the residual category and it will be the recipient which is located outside India, and it will ease out all complications, or do you see some complication coming in where these kind of services will be classified somewhere else specifically and it will still be location of supplier, or is there any litigation you see around this, or what is your comment upon that?
So one, this requires a law change. It will not come from 22nd of September. for this. This is a recommendation from the council for which government has to actually go to the parliament, get a approval for change in the law, and then that needs to be notified. So this change will take some time to get implemented. To my understanding, it will not happen before 2026 and maybe second half of 2026. But yes, it is a welcome change. It is a change which will be beneficial for all those who are sitting in India and who are working as a third party, who actually do not undertake the transaction but only facilitate the transaction between two people, where one is sitting in India, one is sitting outside India. So up till now, it was not treated as export, as you rightly pointed out and you explained the place of supply complication. Now that complication would not be there. And all these agents, del creditor agents, commission agents, all these third party, basically intermediaries, all of them will be able to claim the benefit of exports and zero rating. Though I hardly understand they will have any input tax credit with them. So they may not be able to claim any substantial refund from the government. But yes, they'll be able to actually ensure that their transaction is not taxed with 18% of GST. So that's one change. There is another reverse side of it, which is more important for all the audience who are here. So if you are taking services from an agent, commission agent, or a sales agent, or a marketing agent sitting outside India, up till now you are not paying any tax under reverse charge, because just like if I was sitting in India and giving services outside India, it was not export. The inverse of that was also true. Somebody sitting outside India and giving services to an Indian entity here, it was not called as import of service. Now, because this will be called as export, that the reverse transaction will be called as import. So generally these services are taken by the exporter sitting in India of sales commission agent. Now that sales commission payment which will be done, it will be taxable under GST with 18% tax on it under reverse charge, but the credit of that would be available. Obviously, if I'm exporting, I'll be able to claim refund against that. If I'm doing a domestic supply, then I'll be able to claim a credit against it if it is a taxable supply. So the problem will be that of a cash flow. मेरे को एक बार के लिए 18% टैक्स रिवर्स चार्ज में देना पड़ेगा अगर वो सेल्स कमीशन एजेंट इंडिया के बाहर है. Then I'll be able to claim a credit of it, and then subsequently I can claim a refund of it. But mind you, this provision will take time to get implemented because it requires a law change. So it is not coming within the next 6 months at least.
Okay. There's one more law change which was observed on a perusal of the press release which came out, and it was regarding the discounts. So there's a provision in the law right now under Section 15, which takes care of the valuation aspects of a supply, where any discount which has been decided to be given by a supplier is given after the issue of invoice. There were some conditions under the law which were required to be complied to have a reduction of that discount from the value of supply, so that GST burden can be reduced on that discount. So those were termed as or called as post-supply discount under GST, where the law required that any post-supply discount being passed on should comply the condition, two conditions, which is that it should be pre-agreed. So there should always be an agreement that such a discount will be provided, and that agreement should be dated before the date of invoice which has been issued for that supply. So a pre-agreement was a mandate, and there was one more clear mandate that whenever you have to take benefit of tax on discount, you have to ensure your output liability reduction will be allowed only if you ensure that whosoever you're passing on that discount to, that person is reversing input tax credit on that discount, so that government does not bear that loss. And responsibility was not on the recipient, but rather on the supplier to ensure no government loss. Now, on the perusal of press release, we understand that government is considering omission of the condition which is laid down firstly regarding the pre-agreement. So now government is saying no pre-agreement is required. Whatever you need to reduce as discount, or how it comes out is any kind of reduction in value of supply in the name of discounts is allowed, even if it is not agreed before the date of supply. It also comes out from the release that there is an insertion in law envisaged by linking section 15(3) with section 34, meaning thereby that these discounts can now only be passed by issue of a GST credit note and but not by any other means. Now, one more change which council has proposed, let's see how it comes and when it comes, that there was a circular, considering the current position of law, there was a circular issued by the government which said that because law expect कर रहा है कि ITC reversal recipient करे, but supplier उसे prove करे to the authorities. So to formulate this modality that supplier prove कर पाए, a circular came in where the suppliers were told that you should take certificates, CA certificates or undertakings from the recipients that ITC reversal has been done, and supplier should submit that certificate before the authorities to prove that ITC reversal has been done by the recipient. Now council has decided that that circular will be rescinded. Now they are removing, this means that they are removing that modality also. They are removing the condition of pre-agreed discount also. So now is discount a means to reduce the output liability of any kind, or is still the circle limited by any means?
So you're right, this change will actually, this needs to be seen how it comes, and the way it will come, it is going to be quite big because आज की डेट में पोस्ट सप्लाई डिस्काउंट के क्रेडिट नोट्स और उसका आईटीसी रिवर्सल इज एन इशू. द प्रॉब्लम वाज दैट जिस तरीके से रूल सेक्शन 15(3) लिखा हुआ था, that section, the manner in which the two conditions were there, one condition was very impractical. That's what the industry has represented. Impractical, that it should be pre-agreed. अभी प्री अग्रीड क्या कॉन्टेक्स्ट में है, देयर वाज नो क्लैरिटी इन टर्म्स की क्या क्वांटम भी प्री अग्री करने की जरूरत है या डिस्काउंट देंगे सिर्फ ये प्री अग्री करने की जरूरत है, डिस्काउंट का मोडालिटी क्या होगा, क्या ये भी प्री अग्री करने की जरूरत है. सेक्शन वाज अनक्लियर, सेक्शन डिड नॉट टॉक अबाउट ऑल दीज थिंग्स. सो दैट वाज वन प्रॉब्लम. And second problem, section said कि the recipient has to reverse the credit. But the section did not tell me how will I identify that recipient has reversed the credit or not. So if all of you would remember, last time we did a session in respect of IMS, invoice management system, where now that matching of credit would take place. So we thought now that matching of credit will be done through IMS. Probably what we understand now, what government is trying to do is remove that first, that pre-agreement, because that pre-agreement anyway did not exist in the spirit. It may have existed on paper because section mein likha hua tha, but it did not exist in the spirit. So that is one thing that they are trying to remove. Second, they are saying any which way now IMS is going to be there in few months. तो अगर मैं कोई क्रेडिट नोट इशू करने का मैंडेट मेरे ऊपर डाल दिया जाए एज ए सप्लायर, तो रिसिपेंट का आईटीसी तो ऑटोमेटिक रिवर्स हो जाएगा क्योंकि उसको क्रेडिट नोट एक्सेप्ट ही करना पड़ेगा. तो इसलिए वो कंडीशन को चेंज करा. द ओनली क्वेश्चन विच यू आस्क्ड वेयर probably the answer is not clear today कि अगर प्री अग्रीमेंट हटा दिया तो नाउ कैन आई यूज दिस एज ए मेजर टू क्लेम बेनिफिट आउट माई बेड डेट्स. अगर कोई मेरा कस्टमर मुझे पैसा नहीं दे रहा और वो बेड डेट हो रहा है और मैं उसका क्रेडिट नोट इशू कर दूं पोस्ट सप्लाई डिस्काउंट करके, तो कैन आई डू दैट? Well, too early to answer it based on the press release. We have to see again how would the amendment come. Again, this is an amendment in the law. तो ये तो पार्लियामेंट में ही टेबल करना पड़ेगा. So we'll get to know about the exact wordings of it only in the month of February when the budget will be there. Before that, we will not be able to know it. But what we know यहाँ, because ये circular risk होगा, I understand ये जो circular है जो कहता है मैचिंग करिए, ये इसके साथ में हटेगा, पहले नहीं हटेगा. So we have to wait at least till the time that it becomes law. इसके साथ में there is one more circular which they are proposing to issue, which I think they will issue in due course in next 10-15 days, which is there in your, I think, slide, if you go a little up, where they are saying कि ये जो डीलर और मैन्युफैक्चरर के बीच में कोई सी और तरीके के इंसेंटिव पेमेंट्स होते हैं, and this is very common in a dealer distributor model, where if let's say as a dealer I am selling certain goods at a lower price to my customer, then manufacturer gives me a compensation. Now that compensation, whether that is taxable not taxable, उसके ऊपर ऑलरेडी एक बहुत लंबा लिटिगेशन है जो सर्विस टैक्स से चलता हुआ आ रहा है. और ऑटो इंडस्ट्री के अंदर तो ये बड़ा इशू है, उस तरीके के क्रेडिट नोट जो पीछे से OEM डीलर को देता है, जो डीलर पास ऑन करता है कस्टमर को. सो उसके ऊपर we have judgment of Sai Auto, we have a judgment of Rohan Motors from Gujarat High Court. All of them said no, this is not a service. We have Southern Motors from Supreme Court in respect of VAT, which is on the same principle. Now what government is saying is हम इसको clarify करना चाहते हैं by way of a circular. Interestingly, ये situation already judgments के through settled थी कि ये supply नहीं है, and it cannot be treated as a service given by the dealer to the manufacturer. But because now they have deliberated on this issue in the council and they have said they'll come out with 3 circulars, or at least circular on 3 points, which is non-reversal of ITC, treatment of post-sale discount, and obviously some promotional activities which is being done by the dealer for the manufacturer. We have to see how it will come, and then maybe we have to go back and see all those judgments and see that how agreement needs to be drafted. So this will require this will have some sort of an impact on the complete industry कि industry किस तरीके से काम कर रही. गवर्नमेंट का कॉन्सेप्ट बड़ा सिंपल है. गवर्नमेंट ये कह रही है कि अगर एज ए डीलर आपको कोई पैसा मिल रहा है, वो पैसे के ऊपर गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स आना चाहिए. अब वो टैक्स के लिए उसको क्या सप्लाई के एम्बिट में लेके आना, दैट दे आर ट्राइंग टू क्लैरिफाई थ्रू अ सर्कुलर. वी विल हैव टू सी कि स्कोप ऑफ सप्लाई सेक्शन 7 क्या बोलता है, एंड देन yes, Shuchi, I think we can continue.
Yes, yes.
I think any which way we are on the last one point, and then we have few
Correct.
questions. Yes.
Correct. So post-supply discounts we've covered. There's one big news which has come out with this, that there's little more clarity on when tribunals will start operationalize. When will they operationalize? And whether just a clarity needed on that, whether there's one specific date which has been rolled out by which tribunal appeals have to be filed.
So yeah, government has said that you can now file appeals before September. Before September does not know what is the exact date, but I think all of us should be ready now. All of us have some sort of a matter where we have a against decision from a first appellate authority. All of us are waiting for tribunal because there are some issues which have accumulated, not some, in fact, many issues accumulated in last 8 years. So filings will start from 30th September. Last date to file all the pending appeals is going to be June 2026. And what council has said, that it is expected that the hearings would start some month of December. So at least that's what we understand.
Okay. So with this, I think we have covered the rate rationalization measures as well as the policy measures which have been discussed and decided by the council. I think we can have not much, but a few questions here.
Sure.
Yes.
You want to go reverse? Yeah.
No, I'll put the questions before you. I think we can read the questions which are there in the chat box first. So in case of, I think few you've already answered. What, for example, Dinesh sir here has, or we should go with this. Yes, here. What is the mechanism that the end user is getting the benefit of rate reduction, as most of the traders quote price inclusive of tax, hence by reducing the GST margins, or wherever the questions have already been catered by you, I think I will skip it and I'll only ask when it has not been catered by. Here, Dinesh sir has asked the question regarding changes in pricing, which you've well answered, that there are no anti-profiteering measures or legal provisions which mandate anti-profiteering measures, but the industry has to be self-regulatory about the pricing. But because in businesses, the price negotiations are governed by demand and supply, so one can always impose the supplier or have a discussion regarding the prices considering the rate changes. So that will be catered that way only. There is no authority which will regulate the changes in pricing. I guess this has that clarity has answered this question. In new regime, we are not able to take the ITC on hotel room rent if tariff is less than 7,500. No, as you rightly answered, this is not the case. ITC is available. There's no change in ITC for the person receiving the accommodation service. What is the GST rate of spa in hospitality? As beauty and physical well-being services, new rate is 5, but spa is not mentioned. Sir, if you can put light on this quickly, whether the rate is changed for spa services also.
Yeah. Spa would be part of this. It would be covered in
Beauty and
5% without
wellness.
IT.
Okay. Is GST taxes applicable on group insurance? Yes, it is applicable on group insurance. Whether the revised rate also covers group insurance, sir, if you can put light on that.
Yeah, I think that exemption would be available in respect to, because that's kind of a life insurance only. That's why.
Correct. Okay. How the consumer will get the benefit, we have discussed that. In case of GTA, presently RCM at 5% in ITC is available. Whether we shall no, so to this, there's no change regarding the input tax credit eligibility when you're paying tax under RCM. There's no change in that. So we will still
You
get
are
the
still
ITC.
allowed to claim the credit.
Yes. In case of packing industry, rate of craft paper is increased from 12 to 18, while GST on corrugated boxes is reduced. Hence, accumulation. So yes, if accumulation is there, as we answered, it is there. Cannot do anything about it. Can GST rate cuts help shield domestic produce? Of course, that is one of the purposes for rate rationalization measures being tabled before the GST Council. What proactive action we have to take for implementing the changes? We have very well catered that question, that what changes have to be done in the transition period and what changes have to be taken care of for that particular date. Please also discuss section 15. We have already discussed section 15 regarding post-supply discounts. That change, as you rightly pointed out, is not coming from 22nd September. There has to be a change in the act which has to come, and for that to come, it has to be tabled in the budget. So we have time for its implementation. Switch from with ITC to without ITC costing will, yes, it will cost. Yes, much benefit will not go. There's no question in that. We have discussed it. One of my client is manufacturer of sprinklers. Now he will purchase at 18 and you have very particularly answered to this question. There are precedents, there are judgments which clearly lay down that law does not restrict such kind of inverted duty refund, and it should surely be applied as you suggested. If hotel room rent less than 7,500, then 5% without ITC, but hotel as restaurant, spa, etc. If the taxes of spa and banquets with respect to ITC available and other outlets charging 5% without ITC, then rule 42 applies. Yes, it does. Rule also, if there is any asset which does not complete the useful life and reversal is required. Yes, as you rightly pointed out, if there is any capital goods, rule 43 also has to be followed going forward, as without ITC rate is at par with exemption for the purpose of ITC reversal. Can we take two registration of transporter for under the same PAN for RCM and FCM? Yes, sir, if you can explain this registration modality.
Yes, they can take, no problem. You have to ensure that you have two addresses. You should not take it on one address. If there are two separate addresses available with you, then you can take one under FCM, one under RCM on same PAN.
Okay. The question is that in respect of stock in trade, can we increase our taxable value? Increasing taxable value means increase in prices. Undoubtedly, a pricing decision can be taken for the stock in hand when we are aware that rate changes are there from 22nd September, and we can make price negotiations considering the fall which person will have from the date when taxes will be higher or lower. In both cases, you can negotiate the prices considering that. So I
Only
think
there
we
is
have
a
answered all the
negative.
questions.
There is a negative
Yes.
judgment in this regard in anti-profiteering, where they say if you increase the height for not price for a smaller period, and then you reduce it subsequently to show that you have passed on the benefit, then it will be treated as a non-compliance to anti-profit. So that concept you have to keep in mind.
Okay, so this might hamper that self-regulation where you have to ensure anti-profiteering provisions are also compliant. Okay, so we have considered all the questions because we have passed the timing bandwidth, so we are not able to take more questions, I guess, on this. but we are available on calls and emails, the whole DCO team. The CRMs are available on a call or a message away. We request all the participants to drop their queries on emails or phone calls as and when you find convenient or it is required. We thank you. We heartfully thank you for joining this session and listening to all the aspects and being part of this discussion, which will have huge impact on business from every angle, whether it be policies, whether it be pricing, whether it be inventory management, or whether it be the documentation aspects. I'll thank you and conclude this. And Yash sir, your closing remarks so that we can.
Yeah. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking out time. I would like to just say two more things. I would like to thank especially Soumya Jain and Sanyam Saraf, both chartered accountants, for ensuring that we come out with this. We thought this time, rather than having a publication in a PDF format, which is going to be any which way big, we thought that we'll do it in a website format with a search feature. So by tonight, you'll have the search feature live where you, if you, let's say, want to look at the price for pizza, you can write pizza and it will tell you what is the rate, rather than actually going through the complete document as a whole. So I think that is going to be much useful. That's one. So thank you to them for ensuring that they use the technology in the right way. And we will also try and make this website and put all the council meeting and the updates on a regular basis on this, so that at least we have one reservoir at one place rather than having different PDFs. And we are able to actually ensure that we compile every information at one place. This session will any which way will be available on YouTube, and we'll share it on email. But all of you have taken out time, participated in a wonderful manner, asked all the relevant questions. But still, if there are any questions left, anything which we couldn't answer or anything which you couldn't ask due to paucity of time, as Shuchi rightly pointed out, please reach out to us. Feel free to ask all those questions. We'll be very happy to help and assist you. This change will take a lot of time to sink in. There is no doubt about it. And this will have a ripple effect. So hopefully all of us are going to ensure and enjoy the benefit out of this. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.